Okay, I believe we are live. So I'm going to open this session. Very big welcome, everybody. Welcome to the people in this session in Zoom, but also welcome to the people who are watching this via the live stream, this Renew for Equality online webinar on the topic of law enforcement and LGBTIQ rights. I'm very happy that we're having this session today. It's been a while since we've been discussing LGBTI rights, and we have a fantastic panel of speakers. This is not the first time that we are discussing this topic, because when you look at police, law enforcement, and LGBTI rights, on the other hand, there are actually two very important dimensions. One is the police is supposed to protect everybody. So how does it work in the European Union when LGBTIQ people are feeling threatened or they are indeed being attacked? What happens if they report to the police? Do they feel safe? Do they get protection? Is the police well enough prepared? Do they know what to do? And the other dimension is, of course, LGBTIQ people in the police force itself. It's not exactly the kind of environment where coming out is easy. And I'm pleased that around Europe and indeed in other parts of the world as well, that LGBTIQ people are increasingly organized within the police force, because I think their visible presence and their active presence will also contribute to the first dimension, the police force being and law enforcement officials being actually a force for good, a force for protection of their rights and their safety. I also think it is important we put it on the agenda, because if I look at the country that I know best, the organization of LGBTIQ people in the police force has already a long history, but until the day of today, it's actually almost on a voluntary basis, but we are going to hear the speaker explain more about that in a bit. And I think it is very important that we give adequate support and capacity for this, because I think for the police force, it's also very important to show that it's diverse, that it is the mirror image of society, and therefore it can be trusted by the members of society. Now, we have a very, very high level panel today, and we are going to start with a keynote speech by Commissioner Helena Dalli, the Commissioner for Equality, and I am particularly pleased that she has accepted our invitation, first of all, because I think Commissioner Dalli has proven to be a real activist commissioner, really personally committed and fighting for equality, not afraid to take position, not afraid to break taboos, and really making a difference. And I would like to say that I'm not known for being very complimentary towards the Commission. Usually I'm very critical, but I think credit where credit is due. And I think this Commissioner deserves our support. And I would like to say one additional thing about her, which is not relating to LGBTIQ rights, but the news that broke in the last couple of days, where the Commissioner has taken the initiative inside the Commission to start the debate about how our language can be more inclusive, how we can be more inclusive when we are dealing with each other. And of course, unsurprisingly, that met with a wave of criticism and right-wing people complaining that Christmas would be cancelled and all sorts of nonsense. So I would like to say here publicly again that I support the Commissioner, and of course you can always discuss about how these things are done, but I think it deserves praise that she is breaking that taboo. She is actively making a change, and not just making grand statements here in the plenary chamber, but actually on the ground, also in her own services. So I would just like to state that for the record. Okay, I'm not going to say much more. Commissioner Dalli, we're extremely pleased to have you in our session today, and I'm going to give you the floor for your keynote speech.
Thank you, Sophie. I really appreciate your support, and I believe that we will gradually get there. We have to continue struggling and being also activists, and in the sense that it's just not talking, but taking action. I say activists in that sense. So thank you for your words, and thank you for organizing this. I must start by saying that discrimination against the LGBTIQ community in law enforcement in Europe is real. And this is true whether we are talking about the underreporting of crimes, which according to the FRA LGBTI survey amounts to 80%, or whether we are talking about violence and discrimination by law enforcement officials against LGBTIQ people. On the first issue, a lack of trust of law enforcement amongst LGBTIQ people is a major problem. According to the same FRA survey, most LGBTIQ respondents said that they didn't think the police would do anything, didn't trust the police, or were scared of a homophobic or transphobic reaction. So this situation, I believe, can be improved through greater engagement and cooperation between police forces and the LGBTIQ communities. And this is what the Commission's LGBTIQ quality strategy aims to support. On the one hand, we will keep promoting a safe environment for LGBTIQ victims to report crimes and to improve trust. This is a job for all policy makers working on these issues and for law enforcement. On the other hand, and through our new working group, the Commission will keep working with CEPOL, the Council of Europe, member states and civil society to support training to help law enforcement identify and record LGBTIQ phobic bias and increase crime reporting. The aim of this collaborative work is to help national law enforcement agencies to embed hate crime training in police academies and as part of regular trainings of police officers. This will help police forces to recognize bias motives, to enhance their investigations, and to protect victims adequately. In a similar vein, I know that CEPOL is pushing to integrate fundamental rights as a horizontal topic in the CEPOL training portfolio. CEPOL's own expert group on fundamental rights supports this work, and I'm looking forward to hearing about this from Dr. Schroeder. Exchanges like the one of today help us share best practices and learn from one another, such as the setting up of rainbow desks at local police stations as a safe space for LGBTIQ victims to go. At the same time, we have to acknowledge that more must be done, not least to protect victims. Under the EU strategy on victims' rights, the Commission has pledged to help member states ensure that help and support services such as safe houses are available and accessible to LGBTIQ people. Next year, the Commission will launch a new EU-wide awareness campaign with LGBTIQ phobia as a main theme. We want people to see this and realize that there is help available if needed. And lastly, we will help member states to fully implement the Victims' Rights Directive. In practice, this should mean that victims of crime are recognized and treated in a respectful, sensitive, and professional manner without discrimination of any kind. Next year, the results will be published of an ongoing evaluation of this legislation into whether it is fit for purpose. It is clear that victims' rights are not yet strong enough. We will make, if this is so, we will make a proposal to strengthen them. But the European Commission can and will do even more. For instance, through funding. Under the Citizens' Equality, Rights and Values Programme, we have already funded several successful projects that have improved access to justice for LGBTIQ people, including several involving police forces. In Bulgaria, the Rainbow Shield project is helping raise awareness among the LGBTIQ community about the possibilities for legal protection in cases of discrimination and helping to increase reporting. In Poland, We helped fund an NGO working to improve trust among the LGBTIQ community in the Polish justice system. 120 judges and 120 lawyers have taken or are taking part in training courses organized in different locations across Poland on the equal treatment of LGBTI people. In Estonia, a project is improving cooperation between local NGOs and the police to tackle hate crime against vulnerable groups, including the LGBTIQ community, but also against people with disabilities, refugees, and migrants in Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. In Slovenia, we are funding a project run by the Ministry of the Interior to train Slovenian police officers on how to deal with LGBTIQ victims of hate crime. I want to encourage those listening in, including LGBTIQ police organizations, to monitor these funding opportunities and submit proposals with a view to developing toolkits and sharing good practices across different national contexts on LGBTI sensitive policing. As announced in our LGBTIQ equality strategy, the Commission has also launched a new European Capitals of Diversity and Inclusion Award, which will recognize the important work and inspiring projects of local authorities. By local authorities, we of course also mean local police. We know that so many LGBTIQ people are let down by the justice system, but there are different ways through which we can change this by promoting dialogue between LGBTIQ communities, civil society, and police authorities. We can turn this lack of trust and the risk of violence and discrimination around, thus building strong communities. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. That was a very dense presentation, very rich, with outlining many initiatives that you are taking. I hope you would still have time for a few questions, maybe, before we go to the second part of the program, if that's okay with you.
Well, I have quite a tight schedule, but if it's a short while, I can stay a bit.
Okay, I'm trying to find the chat. Okay, no, it's just a few questions by myself because they're not in the chat. I was just wondering, I heard you refer to the Capitals of Diversity Award, and I was just thinking if, because you know that the European Parliament, in response to the LGBTI free zones in Poland, we have proclaimed the European Union an LGBTI safe zone, and several local authorities have taken that up. They have, their local councils have taken the decision to declare themselves such a zone. I was wondering if we couldn't somehow connect those two activities. And my second question would be about the funding. You referred to the local organizations of LGBTI people in the police force. Would they be able to apply for funding simply for being able to operate? So not for specific programs, because very often it's important that people just, if they have to do it in their own spare time, then it's very time consuming, very cumbersome. But if it's possible to get funding for operational funding.
Okay, so about the European Capitals of Diversity and Inclusion, it is connected and it is also intersectional. So we are taking all this on board. With regards to the support for national NGOs, that's difficult. European platforms, yes. For instance, IGA Europe, So, but I see your point. I see your point. So that is something I think that we should think about also.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. We'll definitely look into that. Our staff will look into those possibilities, because I think it's very often the local branches which are actually doing the work. But thank you very much for being with us, Commissioner, and for your keynote speech. And you have our full support for all the work you are doing. Thank you very much.
I will switch off my camera, but I will listen to Dr. Schroeder's speech, because obviously I'm very interested in listening to what Dr. Schroeder has to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, then we are going to the next part of our program, and we have a panel composed of three very high-level speakers. First of all, Mr. Detlef Schröder, who is the Executive Director of CEPOL, which is the European Union Agency for Law Enforcement Training, and he is, well, a good friend of ours, I would say. We've had many sessions together. And then Mrs. Géraldine Séjournin, who's the Training Ambassador of the European LGBT Police Association, EGPA, and an executive member of FLAG, which is the French association. And then finally, we're going to listen to Mrs. Lilian Haak from the country that I know best, representing Rose in Blauw, pink in blue, blue color of the uniforms, which is the Dutch LGBT police network. And I'm going to ask each of you to speak for 5, maximum 7 minutes, and then afterwards we're going to open the floor for questions and debate. So I'm first going to invite Mr. Detlef Schröder. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. I'm very grateful that you invited CEPOL to the discussion on this very important matter. And yes, I'm happy that it's not the first time that I can take part in this discussion. As you, Ms. Infeld, but also as you, Commissioner, already pointed out, legislations are well on the way, but even when the best legislation can be only successful if law enforcement services simply enforce it, means to bring it into place. That means that they need to take their roles to protect the vulnerable and discriminated groups. It is for me unquestionable that law enforcement services in European member states need to play a key role to protect all groups and individuals who might be victims in the LGBTIQ communities. But this requires that the individual officers understand and fully respect these communities. They equally need to critically reflect on their professional roles. So they need to have the necessary competences, but also the openness to work with such communities in a very sensitive way. As the Commissioner rightly pointed out, a lot has to be done in the future also to build up mutual trust, which is, from my perspective, often lacking. And this is also certainly about the organizational culture, especially within police services. And we are aware that there are repeatedly cases of misbehavior, sometimes even violence committed by law enforcement and police officials against these groups. We're also well aware that their situation is different from one member state to the other. Not in all police services in Europe, members of these communities are really respected and integrated at all. When services cannot realize the full acceptance within their own organization, how can they avoid misbehavior or misconduct in their operations while working with these communities? So it's equally important to achieve a climate of full acceptance within the police and other law enforcement services. We know that some member states take the rights of the LGBTIQ communities very serious. The situation of Netherlands is one good example and will be presented later on in more details. Often such developments are driven by fully committed individuals within the services and hopefully also fully supported by management and political level within the organizations. We know in other EU countries this is just not the case. And no question, this is completely unacceptable. Law enforcement services have to serve and protect their communities, to solve problems and not to be part of a problem. They have always to serve as role models within their communities. However, from my perspective, it would be too short-sighted to put a limited focus only on these services. Police officers are deeply embedded in their communities and societies. They are born and raised within a social system. They live with their families within a local community. And as a matter of fact, we still unfortunately find negative stereotypes against LGBTIQ communities in several EU societies. So it's not a surprise that we find this also in law enforcement services. However, this is not acceptable at all. This can be changed, and we should undertake all efforts to stop such misconduct in law enforcement. A key perspective is the investment into constant education and training to break up such stereotypes, enable full understanding and respect by the officers. Let me in short explain also the specific role of CEPOL in this context. We do provide to all law enforcement communities in the European member states training educational services complementary to the national structures. We are operating in a strong network where we work together with all institutions of law enforcement education and training in Europe. We have an outreach. Last year, we reached out to 40,000 individuals, law enforcement officials in member states. But what do we deliver on this specific topic? As a new agency, we take the European core values very serious in our services. All aspects of fundamental rights and hate crime, including LGBTIQ related aspects, are strong components in our portfolio. We do provide in this field a variety of trainings, especially train-the-trainer activities. In 2021, we have planned and already delivered 23 on-site and online activities despite the pandemic situation towards fundamental rights and hate crime. And this included also dedicated activities on LGBTI matters, especially on hate crime around LGBTIQ communities. CEPOL has established a very strong cooperation with partner agencies like the Fundamental Rights Agency in Vienna. And we also try to engage as best as possible NGOs and civil society into our activities. We are ambitious in the future to enlarge this engagement of NGOs and civil societies, especially in this field. We also strive to improve our whole portfolio on fundamental rights and anti-racism even further. For this purpose, and I'm grateful that the Commissioner already pointed this out, we've established this year an advisory expert group to sharpen our profile, where we try to gather the expertise from the different member states, but also from different organizations, that we can get external advice how we can better improve our services in the future in this field. We have learned with our partners over the years that training in this field needs to be very strongly focused on attitudes, values, and habits. CORE is here to stimulate a critical reflection on organizational cultures and personal attitudes. As we all know, it is most ambitious to change or to aim to change the attitudes and values of an adult. We know that it's very difficult when you talk about matured officers in services, but it's not impossible. We just need to do it right. But even best education and training in this field can bring success only when this is strongly embedded into the policies and organizational structures of law enforcement services. This needs to go hand in hand. Otherwise, even the best training would be just, by the end of the day, a waste of time and energy. It is clear that in law enforcement, the organizational structures and policies stay in the remits of the EU member states. However, I think, and I'm fully convinced, it's useful to have a stronger orientation on European level towards the core ethical values in this regard. I can tell you CEPOL is fully committed to be partner in this challenge, because it will be not an easy thing, will not be solved in the next years to come. It will take quite a while to get over this. I'm also optimistic that there are ways to get over this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schröder. Then we go to Mrs. Sejourna, also for 5 to maximum 7 minutes, please.
Bonjour à toutes et tous, je vous remercie.
Hello everyone, and thank you very much for inviting me to this debate today. I will try to be as dense and as Commissioner Madame Dalli. Flag Association was created in 2001 by police officials, for police officials, to make sure that we can come out in all services and that in order to have the same rights as others. We open to the gendarmerie, to the municipal police, to the administrative staff as well, and to the judiciary since a few years now. Our aim is to help people thrive in their work in police station, and we are losing the speaker, unfortunately.
Je crois qu'on a eu un petit problème de...
I think I had a connection issue. I was completely frozen. I doubt you could hear me. Sorry about that. So our role is clearly to improve trust between LGBTQ population and the police. Hence the interest of trainings. All training started in 2014. At first, we trained around 1,000 officials. In 2021, we trained more than 3,000 people, officials, commissioners, and also officers. So all the levels in the police force. All of us are volunteers. We also created an app. It's called Flag Signalement, so reporting, helping people to report in an anonymous manner hate crimes, so attacks on LGBTQI people, in order to have a proper overview of the situation, to have more information about real attacks, the real situation. We know that many aggressions, attacks are not reported, hence the importance of such work. We also implemented a project called Safe Place. It has been done at first by the Seattle police, and we had heard about that after an international conference. We are developing this effort in France, and our aim clearly is to have LGBT-friendly areas where people can have support, or if they are victims of attacks or violence. And we have agreements with different shops, with public buildings and different places actually, in order to support those people, or even call the police, call the hospitals or emergency services in case of injuries, for example. As members of FLAD, we are also committed to the EGPA. It is an umbrella organization grouping 16 countries, such as France. It was created in 2004. Lilian Hack, among us today, is also a member of EGPA through the Rose and Blau organization and network. This gathering of European police officials helps exchange of good practices. With another Spanish colleague, we are mandated in order to create a training toolkit in order to ensure the training of European police officers and who might not benefit from that training. And I was deeply interested by the speech of Commissioner Dalli on actions in Poland, Slovenia and Estonia, because we can support, if need be, staff on the ground in order to exchange good practices. We created this training toolkit so as to make sure that we have a ready-made solution for all colleagues. We also have a partnership with the CG unit of the Council of Europe.
It allowed us to organize a virtual session in November for police officers who work on this, and in order to talk about the challenges related to trans identity and to introducing complaints. We have organized a session, and we hope we'll be able to organize a second one in December. We have also carried out many other actions so that, well, colleagues and people can exchange in a friendly way and so that they feel good at work. What's more, we have partnerships with staff from police at a higher level, because French police is starting to understand that indeed we need to work so that, well, people feel more confident. So we have this assignment from the police, not as volunteers anymore, but as professionals, to train police officers through France, and we will start these trainings as of January 2022. I hope I have been to the point and synthetic enough. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to hear there is so much activity and positive developments. Our last speaker is Mrs. Lilian Haak from Rose en Blauw for 5 to 7 minutes, please.
Thank you. very much, Ms. in 't Veld, for this invitation. Does the Dutch police deal well with LGBTIQ crimes, and how can we improve this? My name is Lilian Haak, and I work as a Senior Information Security Policy Advisor at the Dutch Police. And I have a side position within Roze in Blauw, the LGBTIQ organization of the Dutch Police. I did deliberately tell this, that is a secondary position, because this applies to all my colleagues within the police. Everyone has a primary duty and a secondary task for Roze in Blauw. Sometimes we get extra hours for that, but not always. And that's a part of the problem we face. Before I can get into the reason for a lack of mutual trust between LGBTIQ people and the law enforcement agencies, it's maybe good to look at the three roles Roze in Blauw has within the police, and at which moments there is contact between law enforcement and LGBTIQ persons, and at which moments we lose that trust. LGBTIQ people who have experienced violence or other unpleasant thing can call the police via a special Roze in Blauw hotline. But there are only a few colleagues who carry out this special hotline service. And of course, LGBTIQ people can call the regular 911 service, but not all colleagues have knowledge of LGBTIQ related problems. And sometimes they give the wrong advice. A man who secretly has bisexual contacts appreciates it when he can talk about the hate crime he faced with a gay or bisexual police colleagues. But the moment this person calls or comes to the office must be at the same time the Roze in Blauw colleague has his working hours. Of course, every police officer can take on LGBTIQ related matters, but not every colleague is equally well versed in this. The secondary task what Roze in Blauw does is internal knowledge transfer. Advice on what action frameworks are for LGBTIQ related matters, so colleagues make fewer mistakes. There is a lot of experience we can share about this, but the will and time to listen and take on our advice must also be present. And the third task we do is the care for LGBTIQ colleagues within the organization. Think about right forms of address, gender neutral toilets, and a safe climate for transgender police officers. More LGBTIQ colleagues improves the LGBTIQ sensitivity of the police. In the field of prevention of LGBTIQ prevention, we do not know enough, and sometimes we even do the wrong things. Gay men are sometimes told, perhaps it's better not to walk hand in hand in your own neighborhood. And a transgender woman in the beginning of her transition was advised, you don't have to walk around as a woman, maybe it's better to do this indoors. Or last year. In emergency aid, the police will always act without distinction on sexual orientation or gender identity. That sounds very good, and I'm proud about it. But the disadvantage is that some common crimes that also have an LGBTIQ element are not properly noticed and are not registered as such. LGBTIQ people can even be perpetrators of a crime or violation, and sometimes a body search has to be carried out for safety or prior to confinement in a cell. But who can search a transgender person, and what should one think about for the safety of a transgender person before you lock him or her into a cell? Especially when you think about the 5 times higher suicide rates of transgender people. And we find that this kind of knowledge is often not present with the normal police officers. We cannot act if we do not know anything. Research into LGBTIQ related problems is difficult because we do not register properly. We do not do this maliciously. In emergency aid drives to an incident of domestic violence, then the priority is to stop the violence. And that is recorded. We stopped domestic violence. Whether it's gay or lesbian domestic violence, we do not know. And whether it's transgender domestic violence, we also do not know. Dutch police officers do not dislike or disapprove of LGBTIQ people, but very often there's insufficient knowledge and insufficient awareness. Sometimes it is said that more attention should be paid to this at the police academy. But with that, you mainly tell it to the young people who start at the police, and that's usually not the group that has the problem. Research and publication are important, but especially guidelines, action frameworks for all employees. I have contributed to a framework about dealing with transgender people in body searches, arrest and containment, and that's just one of the many guidelines we need. A lot is done within the Dutch police about diversity, and LGBTIQ is just one of those aspects. We also pay attention to religious diversity and ethnicity. That sounds good, but it's not always so. The problem of LGBTIQ people are sometimes really different from those of people of color, of different faiths. Gay men sometimes feel uninhibited to speak to a police officer with a bi-gender culture if they have recently been beaten up by someone who rejects homosexuality based on their faith. To conclude, many things go very, very well in the Netherlands, but there is also a lot to do in a country like the Netherlands, where LGBTIQ acceptance always has been important. We are very proud about what Roze is doing, but we must always pay attention to improve that and not to stay on our guards. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to all the speakers. Then we are now going to go to questions and debate. I have written down lots of questions myself, and I would like to ask anyone who wants to submit questions to send them to us or put them in the chat. And until they come in, I'm going to ask some questions sort of generally to all of you. First of all, because I know Flag and Roze in Blauw in the Netherlands are, of course, developing in countries which are, probably generally interested in supporting that kind of initiatives. But how about your colleagues in Poland, in Hungary, in, I don't know, Lithuania, countries where the political climate is a lot more hostile? That's one. Secondly, of course, a lot depends not only on what people are doing at grassroots level, but the political climate is also determined very much by the attitude of the political leadership and of opinion leaders more generally. That's also why I commended the actions of the commissioner, because I do think it's a very, very important message. And do you think that if the idea that we have floated a number of times, and Mr. Schröder also knows this, about having a kind of European code of conduct for the police. So that's not like a European law, but it's a code of conduct that police forces, national police forces can sign up to, which could contain language on diversity, on inclusion, on protection of minorities, etc., etc. How would you feel about that? And then my third and last question is both to Roze in Blauw and Flag. What's your experience with EU funding? Because with Roze in Blauw in my own country, I'm actually very surprised that after so many years there is still no formal support by the police force itself. I mean, if you're in a trade union, you're freed up for so many hours a week. If you do other voluntary work, so why is it still so difficult? And have you tried to get European funding, which would give you a bit more capacity? Maybe I'm just going to call the speakers in the same order as before. So first, Mr. Schröder, then Mrs. Sejournan, then Mrs. Haak. And of course, the commissioner who's still there can also come in whenever she feels she wants to do that. Mr. Schröder.
Thank you. I would focus on the first 2 points that you mentioned. We are well aware, as I said, the situation is very different from one country to another. And how to reach out to those countries where it's more difficult and how we can also impact there, I think people can do on one side, bring information out to those countries, to the institution and the individuals in the countries as well. But I think this should go hand in hand also with some more general development than on European level. And there would come to the code of conduct that you mentioned. I'm convinced we have already a code of conduct for police services in place from the Council of Europe, which is now for 20 years, over 20 years in place. But when you look into the details, I would say there's space to further enlarge this one, to make it more precise, to make it also maybe more operational. But also there, I think I would be very much in favor to have something like this for the European Union as it is by now, because at the end of the day, we all know that such a document is always at the end a political compromise that can be achieved. And what is by now the document from the Council of Europe, what could be achieved 20 years ago in the frame of the Council of Europe. I hope that time has changed, time has moved on, and now we can achieve more. If such a document would be established for the European Union, I would have be very big hopes in this one. And then to transform such a document into action means to bring out the message based on such a high-level, top-level political document also to the services. I think this would be for me an excellent way. But already in the meanwhile, I can tell you we are committed to bring the message out on this one, because at the end, that's also my understanding, my experience working with all the services in Europe, that they are really open for the topic. They're also open to learn, to also to change their habits, while they're all operating in a specific also political environment. And then it's often, especially for police services, or the national political environment that puts questions to this one. You know that, for instance, gay parades in some countries are very difficult pride marches to be enabled. It's very difficult for the police, but it's then only police at the end of the command chain to implement things. But still in the daily habits, I think we can make a difference already by now what we have in place. And I would invite the two organizations, FLAG and also Rose and Blau. I was very curious to learn about, for instance, your toolkit that you have developed. Please be so kind, send it to us. Be assured that we will make the best use of this one together with our expert group, because we are trying to collect such good models from member states where you may have the problem to reach out to other countries. We have the platforms to reach out to the others. We can distribute this easily to other partners in all countries. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. And I agree with your remark on the toolkit. I also took note of that, that they're basically two very similar tools. And it would indeed be very useful to study what tools exist, which work best, et cetera, et cetera. Mrs. Sejourna.
Oui, je vous remercie.
Well, thank you. On your first question, indeed, in other countries it's much more difficult. I've been lucky to take part in the training for trainers for hate crimes organized by the Council of Europe. And indeed, we met our counterparts from Portugal and other countries, Eastern countries, amongst others, Greece and others. And it's true. The pathway is very long in some countries, because some countries even lack a certain legal framework, and some crimes in France or the Netherlands wouldn't be crimes in Georgia or elsewhere, so it is very difficult. As a consequence, well, these exchanges allowed us, well, to create, well, contacts with other police officers, to have exchanges on good practices. I remember a psychologist who was really interested by our work, because, well, it was still a bit taboo in her country, so to talk about LGBT plus things. And so cooperation is pivotal. We need to be able to exchange with our colleagues. Furthermore, we have conferences with international GPA, and in Europe the next conference should be in Greece, and the next international one should be in Australia. These conferences allow for exchanges of good practices, and with FLAG we took, well, this concept of safe haven from the police of Seattle after the international conference in Toronto, actually. So for us, these exchanges are crucial, and they are positive because they allow us, well, to think outside of the box, to see how things are done elsewhere, to then adopt good practices. This is crucial, as I have said, because, well, some countries lack certain resources, and we need to give them a hand, to give them tools. Then on the code of good conduct, yes, This seems essential to me, and indeed it should be widespread, and we should also have a legal framework, but with all member states it will be very tricky, especially when we see these areas which are anti-LGBT in Poland or other countries which are adopting certain measures. Anyway, we need to work on this code of good conduct and good practices. This is essential. Third question on investments and police and justice. Well, we are all volunteers at FLAG, but we have certain authorizations. We can have certain leaves. We can go on leave, so that we give classes at the police academy, and we have also some financial support for our traveling and during our missions. And we are given time to intervene at schools, and this represents quite an envelope, since we indeed have to move for these trainings. I hope I have provided answers to your question. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Before I go to Mrs. Hack, I'm going to ask an additional question to you, which I then also ask to Mrs. Hack. What about, because diversity is, of course, is intersectional, is more groups, more dimensions. What about the other dimensions? Let's say the rights of women, the gender aspect or the race aspect. Do they have the same structures or the same organization like you, like internal organizations, but on a voluntary basis? Or are there more, for example, when it comes to the attitude of the police or the reaction, the response of the police to women who report having been raped, sexually assaulted? I know there's certain protocols, certain ways of dealing with it. So does that mean that the police force has a special interlocutor, maybe internal organizations? Are they also on a voluntary basis, or is that different? And the same would go for, I don't know, for religion or race or ethnic things. Are they all treated equally, or let's say, are you the only one based on voluntary input and not funded? So that's my question to you, and then I'll ask the same question to Mrs. Hack as well afterwards.
Alors en fait,
well, actually, for discrimination, there is a specific module in the police academy which teaches all the discriminations which we have in France: sex, race, gender, pregnancy, all these criteria. And there is one specific class on this. We give an additional class on the LGBT plus questions, because we have this knowledge. Since some colleagues are not able to talk about this, they are not trained on this, we have this specific duty. And this is part of an additional module, a module on all kinds of discriminations at the police academy. Then for victims of rape, whether we are talking about men or women, there is a specific protocol which is put into place, and the staff will train in January. Well, these people are supposed to support people who are to register complaints, so that these complaints are registered with ethics, with professionalism. All of this to say that things are put into place by the administration. It's true then that on LGBT plus question it's quite new, and we have battled with FLAG for this, and very soon we'll be able to train these professionals on these topics, because they were trained on rape, on sexual aggressions and violence at home, but not on LGBTI violence. That's it.
Okay, Mrs. Hack.
Yes, thank you very much for the questions, Sophie. Regarding your first question, we have an adoption program for other countries together with the European Gay and Lesbian Police Association. I am part of Roze in Blauw International. That means that if there are questions from other countries, sometimes I go there or one of my colleagues goes there for a forum or discussion or give training. And the same we do when we receive people from other countries, that we sometimes give presentations, instructions, etc. So guests from other countries we advise, and we also advise them to pick what we call low-hanging fruits. With other words, there are so many things that have to be done, and the Netherlands is very different from Poland or Ukraine, etc. So maybe sometimes you have to look at the simple things that you can achieve. Regarding your second question, why is it so difficult to get hours in the Netherlands and funding for our tasks at Roze en Blauw? And maybe that's the part because we are doing it too good in the Netherlands. We are doing too well. I recently spoke to someone and he says, but all major LGBT problems have been solved. D66 has picked all the subjects. In the 80s, we have gay marriage and adoption by lesbian people, etc. So are there any problems still there? And then I have to explain them which problems transgender people are facing, which problem intersex people are facing, which problem bisexual people are facing, etc. And then they open their eyes. So one of the problems you see is it still necessary to have a Roze en Blauw? Why is there still a Roze en Blauw? Because everything is already solved. So that's one of the problems we have to get time and money for it, because sometimes people have the impression that there is no problem anymore. We're not aware of the EU funding, and that would be very nice, because sometimes when I want to go to another country, because we were invited as Roze en Blauw, we have to ask to our high people in higher offices and to ask if they please would have one or two of my colleagues go there, and to that we can take 1 or 2 days our own time and 1 or 2 days off in company time. So basically it's difficult because we have to pray if we please can go somewhere else. So that's a shame, because we have a lot to tell. We have a lot of experience in the Netherlands regarding this, and we have a lot of knowledge to share, and we would like to share that. The fourth question you had is police for all. There are other groups also in the Dutch police. We, for example, the Jewish police network. And this is also done by volunteers, colleagues who are Jewish by origin or by birth, who participate in that network. So that's about the same. And the risk is that Police for All, which is now the program, think that the problems that Jewish people are facing are of an equal nature than LGBTIQ people. But sometimes we have the same problems, but sometimes they are very different. When it comes to women, we no longer have a clear women's police network. Maybe that was something we had in the 60s when there were only a few female police officers. And now they think that's no longer necessary because everyone is used to having female police officers. But that's the same problem which you have the LGBT. Sometimes we think the problems for females and women in the police are solved, but that's because we no longer talk about them. So that's about the 4 questions you had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I see a message by Mr. Schröder. Oh, Mr. Schröder says he has to leave in 5 minutes. So if anyone has any questions to Mr. Schröder, I mean, the panelists can also ask questions, of course, if they want to. This is your opportunity. I'm looking at my own list. No, maybe my last remark to Mr. Schröder would be more a remark than a question. Is indeed the existing code of conduct. We know that, but I've been pushing from the European Parliament to get a proper EU code of conduct. And I think it was Mrs. Sejournin who said, yeah, but then, you know, if you do it EU-wide, then it will be watered down by countries like Poland. But the whole idea is that we get a code of conduct, which by definition is something on a voluntary basis. It's not legislation, but it could be a kind of certification, if you want, saying that, you know, a national police force and the political leadership are committing to this level of behavior when it comes to, for example, diversity, the discrimination, exclusion, inclusion, and what have you. So I will keep pushing for that. And then maybe one final remark. I don't know if Mr. Schroeder wants to respond to that, but I'll also put it to the others. Is let's say the criminalization of hate speech. Now we have this what's it called? The Council, is it a framework decision on xenophobia and racism, which has been criminalized across the EU, and for many years we've been trying to get homophobia in there as well. I believe the Commissioner as well is committed to that. But if I listen to Mrs. Sejourna and Mrs. Hack, then it would be also helpful for you, and I'm eager to hear the response of Mr. Schroeder. It would be helpful, and your training courses would also then take on a very different nature, I think. So maybe you can still reply to that before you leave, and then I'm coming back to Mrs. Sejourna and Mrs. Hack.
Thank you, Mr. Veld. First of all, let me repeat that I really would like to encourage FLAG, but also Rose and Blau, get in contact with us, because I'd like to maintain these contacts also for the follow-up action for next years to come with your organizations to engage you into our portfolio. Coming to your 2 points, as I mentioned earlier, I would strongly encourage to work towards European Code of Conduct of the European Union, because this would have really a direct impact also in education and training. So there I see a strong role in this one, where even when this would be not a binding legal document, but the impact on education and training could be quite big. And grateful that you picked up the last point, which is about hate speech, because one thing that's often forgotten also, that everything that happens also online around law enforcement, but also law enforcement officials are active. And many things go into the completely wrong direction when it comes to hate speech, also against LGBTI communities. And I think there we need to pay attention, not in just, let's say, in the real world, but also in virtual world, what's going on there. And when I see the examples that I read from different countries of also online groups where police officers have been engaged in what they exchanged, that's completely unacceptable. So also in our trainings, we need to pay for sure attention also in this aspect of what's going on in hate speech and any kind of haterism that is happening online. I think we need to adjust our programs there to cover this as well. For today, I'm very grateful. I'm very sorry that you have to move on to another appointment, that I could not move on to another date, but I wish you all the best for the remaining discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I will make sure that, if so desired, I put Mrs. Sejourna, Mrs. Hack in touch with you. Then I'm coming back to Mrs. Sejourna, and there's a question by Arthur, I don't know, who says, can there be a possibility under the French presidency of the EU to push this issue? And it's a question to Mrs. Sejourna, and would this be something the French authorities would push? Okay, I think it's not for the police itself, but is this something that you could take up with the French authorities, with the French government? I mean, you're already in touch with them about the change of policies, to include this in the French presidency. Mrs. Sejourna.
Je vais répondre d'abord à cette question.
I will first answer this question. We have been talking for a long time about the need to develop that topic. Clearly, we have some clout at the Home Ministry in France, and they consider us as a partner. They trust us because they are requesting us to train the reference people, and then maybe it's going to be quite difficult for an organization such as FLAG, even though we also convey a political message. But then clearly we need a commitment of the government. But at all levels, as FLAG, it is clearly more difficult, even though we are promoting those values. Now, about the trainings mentioned by Mr. Schroeder and yourself. In France, we have a label, a diversity label. It is a kind of award. There is an audit that is carried out, and it may conclude that we have ethical practices, and therefore we can get the label. This is why, for example, the Home Ministry is carrying many actions in order to train its reference points, because the label is guaranteeing professionalism of the police forces in France. Then maybe if we cannot impose through law code of good conduct, maybe we could have an award in order to award the right practices. And as Lilian was saying earlier on, we should go step by step, little by little, and then maybe we could convince other countries that can be still reluctant right now, and then we could conquer other countries afterwards. Maybe it would be a nice way to promote this code of good practices. I hope I could answer your question.
Absolutely. Mrs. Haag.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, regarding hate speech against LGBT people, I remembered the Dutch transgender organization Transgender Netwerk Nederland has published something that's called Altijd op je hoede, or always on your guard. And that maybe says the most about what we always face. LGBT people are always on their guard in the physical world, but also in the digital world. As an example, 1 week ago, the Dutch police made a paper made an article about me as the representative for Roze in Blauw, and I got 500 negative comments. 500. All kinds of hate speech to me, directed to me. So that's one of the things all LGBT people face: hate speech, etc. And always on your guard. Also, we are always aware that we have to defend our lifestyle. And especially regarding transgender people, there's a lot of false rhetoric. Like, for example, the toilet problems. Oh, people are so scared. Transgender people are now going into the female toilets. There has never been an issue with that for more than 5 years, but still, this is one thing that transgender exclusive radical feminists are still mentioning. This weekend, the Dutch government made public apologies for the old transgender law. It was very good. I was there in the Ridderzaal, and this was also mentioned in the news, in the papers. And what you see is that there are a lot of stupid comments which are hurting transgender people and the way people are looking at transgender people in the society. So, and that's very difficult to address at the police, because people feel less comfortable in their environment. They feel threatened. And somebody said, this discrimination has to stop. And I asked this person in Roze in Blauw, who is discriminating you? The world. I said, but as a police officer, I can do something about an individual person, but I cannot change the discrimination the whole world is doing to you. And this person was sad for it, but that was one of the problems we are facing. So they feel this discrimination, they feel insecure, they feel not safe. And as a police officer, I can do something if it's your next door neighbor who's doing something, you are getting beaten up, etc. I can do something. But as a police officer, I cannot change the fact that the world is giving you hate speech. The world is discriminating you, and this world is giving you a feeling that you are not safe when you're working on the streets. And that's one of the things we are facing regarding hate speech. Hate speech causes people to feel insecure and they feel not safe.
Thank you very much. I believe there are no further questions, so I would like to wrap up this today's session a bit ahead of time, but that's okay. in conclusion, a couple of actions and recommendations. I will further pursue this idea of a European or an EU code of conduct, in particular regarding these issues, diversity, non-discrimination, etc. We will pursue this. Then secondly, we will keep pushing, and I know that the Commissioner is on our side for including homophobia in the Council decision criminalizing hate speech and hate crimes, which will also facilitate your work. Then thirdly, I would strongly recommend that Mrs. Sejourna, Mrs. Haag contact Mr. Schröder at CIPOL, and if you need me to intervene and put you in touch with each other, I'm happy to do that. And fourthly, I think I would also strongly recommend that you explore all the options for funding. And now I cannot intervene in that. I'm also not an expert, but my office is also very, very happy to provide information about where you can get assistance or access to funding or more information on funding. And then my final remark is that listening to the Commissioner, there are a lot of initiatives on the way, both legislative and non-legislative initiatives, and that is very good news. That's very encouraging. And maybe, yeah, one really, really final remark is that my group has been pushing for 2.5 years now for what we call a council formation for equality. We have council formations for agriculture, transports, foreign policies, finance, every aspect of life except for equality. And this is something that we'll keep pushing, because that means that national ministers responsible for equality policies will come together on a regular basis around this topic, and not as a sort of a secondary topic, but really as the core responsibility of such a council formation. So thank you all very much. We will stay in touch. I would also like to commend you for your work. I would also like to thank the Commissioner. She's still out there, and thanks for the people watching this, and we will be following up. Thank you very much, and have a nice afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.